Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. First of all, I wanted to say my name is Caitlin Dodson Hamilton. I'm here with my colleague who's off screen, but you guys probably can't see me anyway. Tom Dodson. And we are from Tom Dodson and Associates. We're the environmental consultants on the project, helping BARWA comply with the California Environmental Quality Act. We're super sorry we can't be there today in person again because of the snow. We do have chains, but we figured we might as well try to stay safe instead of drive an hour and a half there and back to deal with the snow. But we're super excited that the basin is getting some water. So at the very least, there's some positives to these storm events. So you are all here today to hear about the Replenish Big Bear project. And this is the scoping meeting for that project. And I'm gonna move to the next slide and kind of talk a little bit about why we're here. What is a scoping meeting? The purpose of tonight's scoping meeting is for BARWA staff and consultants, which is us, including their engineering team, which consists of WSC, an engineering firm. We're here to listen to your feedback and questions about the Replenish Big Bear program. In order to do that, we're going to go through a summary of the Replenish Big Bear program, including the project purpose and objectives. And then we're going to provide you with a timeline for processing the environmental impact report that we're going to be preparing and are in the process of preparing for the project. So any members of the public who are present at the scoping meeting will have an opportunity to comment on the project, either by leaving a written comment or by making your comment verbally after the presentation. So there will be time for that after the end of this presentation. And the presentation isn't too long. It shouldn't take me more than 20 minutes, I would say, 10 minutes. We'll see. I'll try to make it quick, but it is a complicated project. So we're going to do our best to make sure everyone has a good understanding by the end of this. So the project purpose and objectives are to recover local water that is currently being transported out of the valley to Lucerne Valley, close the water loop, and keep water in Big Bear Valley for beneficial reuse. More expansively, I'm going to read these directly because they actually will be in the environmental impact report and do directly relate to the project. The project purpose and objectives and goals will be achieved through the development of a multi-benefit water reuse project that will create a new and sustainable water supply, augment natural recharge for water supply sustainability, protect rare and diverse habitat and species in the valley, promote a thriving community through enhanced recreation, meaning recreation at the lake and also on the mountains, educates the community about the water cycle, recycled water treatment process, and water quality to gain public support. Create a project that benefits all the agencies involved, which includes the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, etc., including all the agencies that are in the valley that are participating in this project, which we'll get to a little bit later. The project also develops a cost-effective approach to offset potable water demands and takes advantage of current outside funding opportunities, which include funding from the Bureau of Reclamation, and the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And moving on, this slide essentially is going to show you an overview of what we're going to talk about individually as what is the program overview. What is the Big Bear, Replenish Big Bear program? I'm going to go over it just generally because this is a really great slide to show you the whole of the project. What does it consist of? First will be treatment plant upgrades to advance treatment at the existing BARWA plant. Second will be the I would say it's second on here is water to Shea Pond, and also the pipelines that's going to take the advanced treated water, which will eventually flow through Stanfield Marsh to Big Bear Lake. The water to Shea Pond is proposed to protect the stickleback species, which is a species of fish currently being protected through use of groundwater. And this project will explore the potential for using this advanced treated water in place of potable water. From the pipeline that's going to go through Stanfield Marsh, there will be downstream releases ultimately to the lake. The project also includes use of an existing pipeline and pump station, including installation of a new pump station to enable the use of lake water for golf course irrigation and increased snowpack, and other uses like dust control. There's a number of things that are talked about in the document, and we'll talk about a little bit later. Additionally, the new pump station, which is towards the numbers 4 and 5 on your screen, is going to enable pumping to Sand Canyon to recharge lake water, just to provide an additional benefit to the community. So from there, we'll talk a little bit more seriously about what does this mean. So the proposed advanced treatment upgrades to the BBARWA wastewater treatment plant will be upgraded with full advanced treatment process at a capacity of 2.2 million gallons per day, or approximately 2,210 acre feet per year. Multiple treatment processes will provide purified water that meets or exceeds all federal water quality standards. This treatment process is shown on your screen from left to right. So it begins with nutrient removal, then moves on to ultrafiltration, then to reverse osmosis or RO, and then to UV disinfection and advanced oxidation process. And we'll go through what each of these means on the next slide, but I want you to pay attention a little bit to the bottom of your screen. Under each of the processes, you'll see that the constituents of concern that will be taken out of the water through each process get smaller and smaller as you go along. That's how we end up with this advanced treated water, I should say. All right, so let's dive in. The nutrient removal is a specialized biological process and chemical treatment that removes most of the organics, nitrogen, and phosphorus from the water. And you can see kind of what this looks like, what the system will look like in the illustration shown on your screen. From there, we move on to ultrafiltration, which uses permeable membranes to remove suspended solids and bacteria from the treated water as it passes through the filter. And again, you can see what that looks like on the screen, illustrated for you. And then we move on to reverse osmosis, where water is forced under high pressure through reverse osmosis membranes to remove impurities, including salts, bacteria, viruses, pharmaceuticals, and personal care products. And in the past, those have been pretty important things to the community. There were concerns that this process would not remove the appropriate constituents, and this process most certainly will, especially due to the reverse osmosis that the process will use. And then from there, we move on to an additional process, the UV disinfection and advanced oxidation process, which will produce high intensity UV light, disinfects the water by damaging the DNA of the microorganisms, while the advanced oxidation process utilizes a non-selective oxidant to destroy trace contaminants. So at this point, we would have the advanced treated water that this project is intending to create through this process. However, that process also involves the release of brine, and therefore the project will require brine management facilities. And there's an example process shown on your screen, and we'll kind of go over verbally what that looks like. The reverse osmosis process produces a liquid brine concentrate that requires disposal. A desalter system will use an additional reverse osmosis process to reduce the liquid brine volume, and a pellet reactor, which is the second sort of illustration on the screen farthest to the right, will produce solid pellets for disposal or reuse. The remaining brine will be evaporated on site using 23 to 57 acres of solar evaporation ponds that are planned to be installed within BARWA's existing treatment plant property, but to the sort of north and to the west of it, not necessarily in that, the area that you would see with all of the wastewater treatment facilities. And that's what we'll be analyzing as part of this project. So from there, we have to talk about the fact that this is going to create water. And how are we going to get it to the lake? We're going to install a pipeline. So the new pipeline will go from the wastewater treatment plant to Stanfield Marsh through one of the alternatives that you see on your screen. And we are analyzing all of them. So the district will have or the agency, I should say, should have a chance to decide which is the best for this project. And you can see 2 discharge points, and obviously those are at Stanfield Marsh, not directly into the lake. This allows for benefits to Stanfield Marsh in addition to providing additional water for the lake. So next, we will talk about the Sand Canyon recharge, which will use an existing pipeline and pump station as shown on the sort of right of your screen. The new pipeline and pump station for the new from the new pump station that will discharge to the Sand Canyon recharge area is shown at the bottom of your screen, and the new pipeline is shown in orange. This particular project will include recharge and the installation of 2 monitoring wells in the Sand Canyon recharge area, just to monitor the groundwater levels, quality, etc. And at this point, from this new pump station, lake water can also be used for golf course irrigation, construction uses, and possibly for snowmaking. All right, so from there, we move on to the Shea Pond discharge, which I mentioned is to support the unarmed stickleback species. I apologize for my unarmored. I don't have it in front of me, so I apologize. Which is a fish species that's currently being maintained. The habitat's being maintained through groundwater, and this project potentially would enable the use of this advanced treated water, which would include a new pump station at the BARWA Wastewater Treatment Plant, use of an existing unused pipeline, and possible, we'll consider whether this pipeline needs to be replaced as part of the project as well. And then there's a small part that's a new pipeline shown towards the bottom of the screen in the center, which would be the new discharge point to support the species. So the potential downstream watershed benefits of this project are increased dam releases in wet years, more water for habitat in the Santa Ana River. Additional releases can also be captured for recharge in the San Bernardino Basin. I think that's it. So this project not only has a benefit to the Big Bear Valley, but it also has a potential downstream benefits to the San Bernardino Valley as well. All right, so to summarize, purified water will be discharged to Shea Pond to sustain habitat for the federally listed unarmored 3-spined stickleback fish. It's quite the mouthful, hence my use of the term stickleback, which is currently sustained using potable groundwater. Purified water will be discharged to the Stanfield Marsh and Waterfowl Preserve, providing a consistent source of water to sustain habitat and increase educational opportunities for the community and visitors. Purified water will flow through Stanfield Marsh and provide new inflow to the lake to increase inflows and lake level, enhance recreational opportunities and aquatic habitat, and support water quality improvements within the lake. When needed, purified water can be stored in the lake and pumped to Sand Canyon to recharge the groundwater basin and strengthen the sustainability of the groundwater basin. Purified water can also be used in the lake for additional golf course irrigation and dust control by the Big Bear Mountain resorts in the summer. Additionally, during wet periods, excess purified water stored in the lake could be stored locally as snow, which would provide flexibility to increase and enhance winter recreation, reduce spills from Big Bear Lake, and augment spring runoff and increase groundwater recharge. Lots of benefits here. This activity is not currently planned to be implemented by the project, but it's being considered as part of it, just in case the opportunity and the need comes up in the future. Additional inflow may enable BBMWD to modify their current Big Bear Lake management strategy to minimize spills and optimize releases to enable additional water to be captured downstream for a recharge of the San Bernardino Basin rather than discharge into the ocean. I believe that is the summary. So now we move on to where are we at in the timeline? And this is sort of an overall scope timeline, and there's been a lot of things that have happened up to the publication of the notice of preparation and the scoping meeting that you are at, but we'll start from there. So we're currently in January of 2023. We've completed now one scoping meeting, and you're here at the second, and we're here to take your input. And then we're going to take your input and then all the technical analysis that's being prepared for the project to write an environmental impact report. We anticipate that environmental impact report draft will be published sometime in the summer, likely around July of this year, with us responding to your comments or to any agency, federal agency, state agency comments happening in August, and a final EIR board hearing and filing of the notice of determination, which concludes the CEQA process, typically, in October of 2023. But from November to March, November of this year to March of next year, NEPA compliance would occur, which includes the compliance for the Bureau of Reclamation and the Environmental Protection Agency and any other federal funding agencies that may provide grants for this project. And then in October of 24, thereabouts, from there, then to around January of 2027, construction will begin on the project and it will be operational, hopefully, by January of 2027, so in about 4 years. My colleague would like to add a little something, so I'm going to let him speak for a second.
Good evening. This is Tom Dodson. All I really wanted to do was to remind everybody that the California Environmental Quality Act enables projects to be implemented. They don't have to be implemented. And that's important because sometimes people assume, well, this means you're going to implement everything you see that Caitlin's just laid out for you. In fact, we'll work with the various agencies in Big Bear, and we'll work with them to implement everything they can within the scope. But again, doesn't mean that everything that's identified will get implemented immediately, maybe over the longer term future. Just keep that in mind.
And with that, I'm going to just briefly give you a little bit of the scoping meeting comment procedure. We are here to listen and record your comments, both in writing and by recording the meeting. And your questions and comments will be responded to in the draft EIR. So if we don't have an answer to something, we promise you we will provide an answer and a location where you can find your answer if it's elaborated on in the environmental impact report. Written and spoken comments are treated equally. And you can write a comment card or you can speak up today. And then lastly, this is a small meeting, so you can take longer than 3 minutes to verbalize your comments. But if someone has already made a comment that reflects your thoughts, you can always say, I agree with so-and-so's comment. Beyond that, we're here to listen. And I really appreciate that you came out to hear about this project.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments? Okay. Do you have a
question?
Okay.
You mentioned 3 agencies that are you're applied for grants. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we have We actually have the state, we applied for a state grant, Title 16, and the EPA, they're both federal grants. So we did both state and federal grants, at this point. So we have been informed of about 17 million grants to date, that we, have, paperwork started on them, and then we have the opportunity for another, it's about 7 million, so to a total of about 25 million, somewhere in there. And again, some of those grants limit, the federal grants are limited to 25% of the actual project cost. And so that's the limiting factor. As the project progresses, we'll know, we'll finalize those costs, and that will help us determine exactly how much federal funding we can get. Well, typically Title 16, which is the Bureau of Reclamation, they will, like I said, fund it up to 25%, and they usually work with us on adjusting those numbers based on our project cost.
Where do you anticipate the other funding to come from?
Right now, the additional funding is we have several agencies participating in some additional funding to support the project, including MWD, DWP, CSD. The city of Big Bear Lake has been spoken to about it. The ski resorts have been spoken to about it. We don't have a commitment yet from MWD for future funding. They've been funding this project, just so everybody knows. DWP, CSD, BBARWA, and MWD have been funding this project to date to make this project progress as far as it has. Future funding that would be for ongoing O&M and debt financing would come from those agencies, and then the balance, obviously, those agencies, and then the balance would actually come from the ratepayers.
For disposal sewer.
Yeah, it'll be through this, it'll be through our sewer piece, correct?
That could cause there to be additional fees on our, I don't know what the terminology is.
Yeah, it's basically the BARWA, there's a BARWA fee on your current bill, yes.
Right.
And those BARWA fees will definitely go up with a project like this, for sure.
And does that need to be approved? It's a utility bill and has to be some approval?
Yeah, so it goes from our board, we'll be doing a rate study to look at the cost of the project. And based on the cost of the project, a proposed rate will go forward to, there's 3 agencies that BARWA consists of, but it's a JPA, Joint Power Association, and agency, excuse me. And that includes the city, CSD, and the county. Those agencies are represented on our board. They'll approve that rate structure. We'll pass those rate structure on to our member agencies. And they'll go out to the general public and do a Prop 218 vote of the people. So I get approved that way.
So how long would it take once it's up and the wetlands are wet? How long would it take before the lake gets the overflow and starts spilling?
Mike, do you know how many acre feet are in that? In the marsh? The marsh.
About 165 acres. It's about 12 feet deep, average of about 6.
So, I mean, that would be probably,
We fell very quickly.
yeah, like 4 months, 3-4 months. It would fill up and then it would start to flow over.
And spill into the lake.
Yeah. I mean, we do an average of 2 million gallons a day. So,
It starts to flow through at 12 and a half down full. So there's only a little moat that's 14 feet deep around the island. And then the bottom of the pipes, which cross in the Stanfield Marsh, are 12.5 feet down from the full lake. And then they daylight to the moat, which is 14 feet down. So it's very little water to take to fill up the moat, make its way to the bottom of the pipes, and then start to make its way through. At that point, the water is just going to be going through. With the lake the way it is, it kind of moves through as it now. I had a comment yesterday about who owns the water that's in Ball Lake. I said, well, blink an eye and it'll be gone because the lake level's down 15 or 16. Actually 16 is my guess this moment, and the marsh is only 12. So it makes its way through the groundwater very quickly into the lake, just through that. So the idea of this pond over here, Stanfield and the lake separate, that's a very short-term situation. As soon as the water starts to be discharged, it'll be a matter of weeks before we have that connection to the lake. Doesn't mean the marsh will be full. It means it'll be moving from the marsh to the lake. So, I assume that a lot of at least the initial water will just soak into the ground. You know, our lake is a pretty good clay bottom. The marsh is included in that. There's not a whole lot of groundwater connection from the lake. There is some. I've seen the trips not flowing and the lake going up on a situation like we experienced today. But for the most part, we have a pretty thick clay layer. We learned that when we did the East End dredge. You know, it's 30 feet deep, the clay layer. It's unbelievable. So there's not a lot of water that's making its way into the lake and then into the ground. But as we fill up in a dry condition, it will start to make its way through the groundwater laterally, you know, outside of the lake, and vice versa. In a situation like this, where we're 16 down and the ground saturated, it's moving its way. You know, it finds equilibrium, right? Sure, whatever that may be. Yeah. So I think it's true to say what you said, and it's also true to say that it goes in reverse too, where we're actually getting the groundwater into the lake on lower conditions. We're getting the groundwater or the water in the lake into the groundwater when the lake goes up very quickly and the ground's dry. So right. It's almost not measurable, to be honest with you. It's very small amount. Okay.
David, can I provide an additional response?
Sure.
One of the things that will happen as we move forward with this process, and you've got just about the most marvelous group of people in the world to deal with it, they will be implementing a term, I'm going to use a term here, adaptive management. And so instead of allowing water to flow over the dam in a certain situation, the agencies can make the decision to transfer that water up and recharge it into Sand Canyon, or to use other alternatives for the water to be able to make sure that they get maximum benefit out of this program. And that's adaptive management. And I think that this is something that the community needs to be aware of and also participating in, as to what is it that you believe is the maximum benefit that needs to come out of this effort. Thanks.
So will there be piping that goes to Sand Canyon? Is it uphill, or where does it lie relative to the marsh?
So the plan is,
So go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, the plan is to utilize the snowmaking line that goes to Bear Mountain right now. The plan is to utilize that existing snowmaking line, pump it up to their holding pond, and then actually build a short, I think it's like how long? About a mile?
Like a mile.
Like a mile, to take it from their holding ponds over to Sand Canyon and to the spreading ground in the Sand Canyon area. And it would come from the lake.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. It would come from the lake.
It would not come here.
No, it would.
Well, definitely come from there.
It's here,
Well, yes.
but he came from the marsh. It would not come from the marsh, or would he come from the lake up to the Sand Canyon?
Right, so it would be the project water that's native to the lake.
Yes.
Pumped up into the
Yes.
canyon.
Yes.
That's important.
That's important.
To me.
That's important to everybody.
Extremely important to example. A couple of years ago, when I first heard this, there was talk about putting a weir where the water flows into the lake. to catch any debris and that sort of thing? Is that still in the works?
I don't think, it's up to him.
It's not, but you've been around a minute listening for a long time apparently, because we've explored it for two different reasons. We've just explored it when fish were trapped into the marsh as the lake dropped quickly and they got trapped, and we explored it for this project because of the biofilter that exists in the marsh when it's had water in it for a period of time is incredible. It works very well. It's fantastic. I mean, people design biofilters that don't work as good as the marsh does if it's had some time. Some really good rushes and thick grasses that just really do a good job. So the thought was we could do what you just described and hold that water back and continue to keep that biofilter thriving. And then somebody said, well, what if you flood some residents next door? I was like, the hell, weird. So, that's how that really, I can't remember if Mr. Dotson or if our engineer was working on that. They said, to add something that could create a flood risk, it's a liability that we won't back you on. So we just eliminated the idea and hoped that this project would come about and the biofilter would eventually be sustained by this project.
Yeah. So then will there be some kind of screening or something to keep fish out of the marsh? No.
No, I would actually encourage fish in the marsh, to be honest. You have some beautiful spawning habitat with some of those rushes and sedges and juncus grasses and things that would be there all the time. Even in the winter, some of them do pretty good. Some of these terrestrial grasses do really well. No, I would encourage the fish to move back and forth because that habitat for spawning is really good. When you have years of, if you go back in the late 90s all the way through the early 2000s, heck man, there was all kinds of fry making its way back and forth through that pipe with that kind of habitat that was there. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places when it has water, but it doesn't do us much good right now.
And I just want to be clear that right now, all of the water the residential water comes from wells, not from the lake.
That's great.
I've had people ask about that.
Just not currently contractually permitted at all.
Yeah, Mike gets mad at me if I take it up.
Yeah. Like when he walks by the lake.
When he even thinks about it, he's like, I heard him thinking.
Well, he gets water in his pants and takes a little.
Yeah, that's it.
Any other comments or questions?
I assume that at some point when it discharges down the mountain, that those entities will be kicking in some monies to us. How does that work? How does that balance out against
There's
water pumping now?
I didn't understand the last part. I was saying the first part, the last part.
Right now, we're pumping it down.
Yeah, what value from down going this way instead of that way could we realize?
Yeah, I assume that they're gonna pay something for it down there. I'm wondering how the revenue will wash out between going down this side and going down that
That's a
side.
good question. Well, that side's not all that great. Sorry.
No, it is. It's a couple.
This side, there's currently a contract the Valley District has for any agency producing water within the Santa Ana Basin that is new water. So this would be classified as new water. We did a very expensive study to see how much new water we possibly could create from this project that they could use. Because I think that one of the slides about using some of the water before it makes it to the ocean, if you look at the 2005 event, 11 and 12 event, those waters, the basins were already full. When we started releasing, they didn't want it. They were, they just went to the ocean.
Right.
Well, the idea is now the Valley District is doubling, actually more than doubling. They're going from 200 CFS capacity to recharge in the San Bernardino Basin, one of the most overdraft basins on the planet, certainly in the United States, to 500 CFS capture ability. So they would be able to capture this water as we're releasing it, even in a storm that they've been experiencing for a few days. They would pay $164 per acre foot of that water realized that they could put in that basin directly, technically to me, which would be passed through the project. So I hope that answers your question, but that's the only real contractual payment structure that's in place right this second that we can count on. But there's a lot of other folks even down further. I don't know how Mill Creek works in it. But there's people that are all watching this project to see where the benefits could occur. And if they were allowed to use some of that water that we weren't using, there certainly would be some negotiations involved.
I don't know the topology, where would it come out?
Newport Beach. Newport Beach, it goes right through where there's that Santa Ana River Lakes. I'm a fisherman, so I can guide by fast food and fishing lakes.
No, you're too far south there. I'm talking about where the water coming out, go down to San Bernardino.
Oh, it would go through Bear Creek. It would go through Bear Creek. It would meet at the confluence of the Santa Ana River, which is, I hate to say the Dorner House, but where that occurred.
Yeah.
Is where
Highway
that,
38.
is where that weir is.
Yeah.
So that's the confluence of the two. Those two then make Santa Ana River. And from that point, it goes along the 91, the Green River, and makes its way down to the ocean there. There's some partial flumes that move water to one side of the canyon and the other based on prior rights holders, which you hear a lot about. So some of it gets diverted on one side of the Santa Ana, and some of it gets diverted on the other based on the current flow. Good example, this morning there was 8.6 CFS going to the Santa Ana during the storm. I had more than that in my little creek behind my office that I currently named Mike's Creek. So this water hadn't made it there yet. So no one was allowed to touch any water because there's a requirement to keep the Santa Ana sucker alive and things like that all the way downstream. But I'm guessing it takes about 9 hours from here. Our weirs went from 2 to 10 in about 3 hours, from that like 8 to 11 o'clock thing this morning. So I let them know it was coming. The first set of water is really dirty and they let it go. Then after that, they start using it and diverting it on both sides of the stream. But there's only a certain amount that can be moved and used consumptively because of the habitat from here to the ocean. I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah,
I gave you some more information.
thank you.
And I just wanted to add really quickly that, all these questions that are being brought up specifically, these sorts of questions about where's the water going to go, that's all going to be addressed in the environmental impact report and the technical studies that are going to be prepared for that. So expect more information to come your way.
So I don't have to answer any more questions?
You're doing great.
That's what I just heard. Somebody else is gonna do that later.
She's just, you're kidding right now to know what to put in the technical report, that's what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
She just took your answers and wrote them down.
That's gonna be the answer. Well, that's the real one. You know what, good thing for people to understand too, and there's consumptive uses down in Santa Ana. It used to be, they used to say the water that left the dam that was above and beyond the requirements for the Santa Ana sucker and these other things is used 2.7 times before it makes to the ocean. Now they say it's over 4 times.
Sure.
So it's going here, get used, and then coming back its way. So I expect more values as people understand what could happen. The lake will spill more often. That's a fact.
Sure.
It doesn't spill immediately.
Right.
It could never spill again based on that. But history will tell you that the lake's 110 years old. We spilled 11 times. And with more water, we anticipated to spill 1.5 times more often, just based on the models that we looked at.
Mhm.
And then that's where the negotiations come, because we're not releasing water for money. We're just not, the lakes management is there to fill the lake, stabilize lake level for recreation and wildlife. That's what we're there. And so, other than the folks that have made deals with the project water, there's no lake water being discharged for other reasons. It's going to stay there unless we have this impending spill. And then groundwater recharge is probably the #1 priority in the state of California right now.
When they evaluated, we went through a process, we were going for a couple of grants. We did about 5 million in grants. This project was actually rated #1 in the Santa Ana watershed because of the benefits it added, not only locally, but downstream, based on what Mike is.
Yeah, and by default, there's no other water coming into the Santa Ana. There's
Right.
water being exported from the Santa Ana here, and there's no other place on the planet that's even permissible. So then nobody's exporting water from Santa Ana except for that guy.
In this, I think, what was it, like 80, was it about 80 projects we looked at?
You know, at the, you talking about Sapa?
Yeah, Sapa, yeah, I think it was like
Yeah, they're
80
down
projects,
really quick.
and we came out number one, so pretty spectacular project overall.
So the water that's going down to Lucerne right now,
Yes.
then would stop and then it would be diverted? Or is this is gonna add additional?
The water going to Lucerne and stuff.
And so that's, I think that's what you were alluding to, that revenue from that.
How much is that revenue?
25,000 a year.
That's it?
26.
26,000.
How much?
I'm a little off.
$6,000. A little more than $2 grand.
And by the way, we have to, we spend more than that probably on between equipment and everything else that we do, and monitoring and everything else that we do down there. We spend more than
It
26,000.
costs you more to send it there than you get it.
I could probably take more on property taxes. The property that we own down there than.
It's leased to the farmer, he grows water crop for animal control. That's it, I mean, that's it, and that's in a nutshell.
But we've maintained control of the water, which is important.
You can take that away from them anytime you have no contract.
That's true. Yes, we rewrote the contract, 4 years ago. 4 years ago, we wrote the contract. They give us a 12-month window to, anytime we wanted to, we let them a 12 months at a time. Or out of it.
But this is Tom. But always remember that what we're doing is making a physical change in the environment. And we have to explore all those physical changes and what the consequences are. So we will be discussing those issues. We have no choice. It's a change. On the other side of the coin of that is that the changes so far are reflective of the farming activity and the fact that we don't have a couple more acres of alfalfa or savanna grass doesn't qualify as a big time impact. Where we might have to address this in more detail is the input into the Lucerne Valley aquifer. And we are going to do that. That's part of what we have to look at. It's a change.
But the issue is, this is the Santa Ana region. We restore our water to the Colorado River Basin. Okay, so Santa Ana water to the Colorado region.
Well, and that's what Mike was talking about.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen anywhere else.
When I got here, I was like, we have 2 permits?
You do what?
You do what? And I was like, okay. Interesting.
Anything else?
Well, my name is Stephen Sauter, and I just have a couple of comments. One, I think this is a tremendous opportunity for us to see some sustainability here in the valley, and a really strong ecological ploy for us here in Big Bear. I'm really glad that this project is moving forward and moving at the correct speed. I understand this is at the environmental impact point, and that more studies will become and more issues will come up over the next year or so. But I just want to voice one of my main concerns right now is that the cost of doing this project will impact the residents. And not all the residents ski or boat or golf or do anything in the village. We get no byproduct from those businesses and from that industry. And so I feel very strongly that that is a secondary. That would be a byproduct that those businesses and that part of our community is a byproduct, is secondary. And the primary advantage would be for the residents and for those that live here, work here, pay taxes here, and are going to pay for this water and project.
By the way, there is a goal to try and get that same group, the visitor base, to contribute towards the project. So there is an effort currently to make that happen.
In what manner?
Through TOT, that's one.
So I gotta interrupt because the TOT is not earmarked for this project and that's not what was voted on by the people of this basin. So if it's a request for monies that will come to the city and the city council will make a decision whether or not to appropriate a share to fund the project, but the TOT is not earmarked for this project. I need to make that clear.
I agree, but the city is not the only applicant for TOT. The county is also an applicant for TOT, so it's not just the city. And the discussion has not been just with the city. I know.
I don't care about any other agency. I don't care about the city.
Right, I'm just.
And I don't want to use TOT as the funding mechanism for this project, period, for the city. When we're ready to pay, we'll pay out of our bank account, if you will.
Excuse me, can you explain what TOT is?
Transient occupancy tax. So when you stay in a hotel, you're assessed a TOT tax as part of your hotel bill.
Okay, I just didn't know what the acronym is.
Yeah, so that's the one of the mechanisms that the visitor group can contribute towards this project, right?
Are there others?
There probably are others, you know, like, I think there are like boat permits, that's another avenue. But other than those kind of avenues, really isn't a whole lot of way of getting to the visitor base that impact our valley.
And if the resorts participate, because more people come up to see, because there's more snowmaking.
Right,
That's
the resorts are another one.
roundabout way.
Those resorts are another one, so, that would be another way of trying to, realize the benefits of this project, to the visitor base as well. So, yeah, if anybody can come up with any others,
How about,
we're open to that.
about the current contracts with the ski resorts, and the golf course, is that a year to year, or is it a long-term contract, or what?
It's a long-term contract with an extension option that could be exercised in 2032. We currently have a kind of a use it or lose it program. They can use 11,000 in a 10-year rolling period, no more than 1,300 in any given year. And the current payment is around $400,000. It escalates 2% annually. So in 2032, there could be negotiations or discussion on either side. But right now that contract's in place until that date.
With the current, recently passed infrastructure bill, would that be any, this project be eligible for any of that?
So the infrastructure bill, there's a lot of opportunity for us, you know, like grant opportunities. We are realizing that already. Some of that, you know, is how the Title 16 has been, when we went out for grants. So some of that additional money became available. There'll probably likely be additional funding in the future through grants. But again, we will be, for federal funding, we'll be limited to that 25%. So the goal will be to go after that state funding, which we have been rather successful. This team has been rather successful. We already got $5 million for from state grants, but that's, again, that is, you know, we'll be continuing to pursue those things as those grant opportunities become available. Most of that goes towards, you know, not ongoing costs, but more capital, which lowers our ongoing costs, you know, because it lowers our debt service. But those are grants that obviously we're going to continue to go for and get as much as possible. But this project is, the grants that we've received so far, and, likely, like I said, to get about 24 to 25 million. I mean, obviously, that's a huge benefit to this valley, one that hasn't seen before. So, and that's attributed to this, project team that we have.
Will you have more meetings like this where the community is involved and, or at least aware of where we're at on that timeline?
So we always, obviously, we try and inform our board on a monthly basis where we are with the project, project updates, or the board is informed on the project updates. Obviously, the general public can see those reports that come in and come to our meetings and hear about new things that are coming up. We have piloting that is coming up, with great studies and all those things that are coming up. So you'll see the notifications out there about our current meetings and about the project status.
May I answer that one?
Sure.
In the secret process, this, and Katie's already gone over this, but what will happen is there will be a public release of the environment impact report, which will then be typically followed about halfway through the publication period with a public meeting to allow people to comment on the environmental impact report. Then, subsequent to that, we will come to a point where the EIR comment period will close. We will then prepare responses to comments, and then we'll move to a public hearing in front of the various boards that need to hear this. And then what will happen from that is we will publish that document, have you guys review it and give us final feedback. And then a decision is made on the content of the environmental impact report. So there's at least 2 more opportunities for the public to comment directly. And in reality, this is a third because you actually have the opportunity to comment in writing on the EIR.
So not only will there be project updates, but obviously the environmental work will continue. You'll have an opportunity to write and see some of the outcomes from these meetings and some of the studies. You'll be able to see the outcome of those, some of the say impacts, and then and what the project does to offset some of those impacts.
And can there be regular or even irregular articles put into the Grizzly so that more people than are here tonight have an opportunity to know what's going on and maybe get more involved than they are right now?
Sure, and we, just so you know, I mean, we've had lots of articles, and you probably
I'm sorry, I don't take it.
yeah, lots of articles in the Grizzly, lots of we've Facebook. We've been all over community service groups,
The
presenting
Chamber of Commerce, the newsletter.
and chambers, newsletter. I mean, we've been all over the place. We will continue to do those. The outreach efforts continue and ongoing, and we will make sure that we, get a hold of Kathy Forty and make sure that we ask her for, some pretty consistent updates. But she's usually pretty good about coming to our meetings. She was at the last week's meeting, and is there probably an article coming out?
Yeah, there's probably one coming out this week, so.
This week.
tomorrow.
On this whole process.
There's only one real website in the valley that's updated regularly, and that's the Replenish one. They just Bridget.
Yeah.
So that's a really, if you want to look and see what's fresh, she will make sure it's there when we know.
What's that website?
Just to replenish.
replenishbigbear.com.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have a newsletter, if you wanna just subscribe to that, it'll get delivered to your
Cool.
inbox
Yeah,
as well. And that's on a monthly basis.
yeah.
Doesn't mean I'm gonna update my website, but she does a good job.
We get a lot of information from him to update it. He works really hard, making sure we're all informed about what's going on.
And then, so I can understand, what's the different agencies, what are you,
I work for the Replenish Water District.
Big Bear, this,
Yeah, the lake master.
Lake Management, okay.
I work for the Department of Water, City of Big Bear Lake Department of Water and Power. So I'm sorry.
I'm currently just a normal Joe citizen. And then I receive.
Then it becomes everybody's
He's
dog.
not my boss yet.
I'll be his boss.
He's not my boss.
I'm just here making sure he's doing
That's it.
right.
Very good. And you, sir?
I'm the city manager for the city of Big Bear Lake.
Okay, very good. And
And I'm the general manager for BARWA.
Barlow. Okay, very good.
And I'm the plant manager for BARWA, so I'm gonna be the one that will be producing the water to discharge.
Very good.
So we're just two citizens here tonight? I'm simple.
Well, you are.
Voluntarily, yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't been sworn yet.
Yeah.
And he's still not my boss.
So you really have three. But I think all of us actually live here in the valley, and so obviously, the lake and our water sustainability, our valley is really important to all of us, not only for us, but for our kids and our grandkids, and that's why we think a project like this is so important.
Yeah, I remember fishing, I fished in the marsh in the nineties. With water, I've been coming up here since I was, 3 months old.
Are you a permanent resident now?
I am a permanent resident now, and I also, own a cabin that my grandfather built in 1953. So I've been permanent without it for a long time.
Just remember, I've been doing this for 30 years, and water is our most precious resource on the planet itself. It's the same water that was here when the dinosaurs were here, same water that was here that the Egyptians used. It's the same water that is used over and over and over again, the water cycle. If the droughts get stronger, when everything starts to dry out, we still have wastewater coming here every day. Every day people are taking showers, flushing the toilets and everything. You put and add back to the water cycle. And it's really just an intelligent thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anybody else have anything?
Anything else?
Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for coming. I appreciate your.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Yes, happy to be here.
Hi, everybody.
Yes, thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Caitlin.
All right.
Bye, Mary.
You're just taking over everything.
Yes.
Business.